All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're looking at a really fascinating and I think pretty radical way of understanding personality. It comes from a source called the Ouroboros Codex, and it reframes some of our most difficult psychological conditions not as, character flaws, but as system failures.
So we hear these words all the time, right? Narcissist, borderline, sociopath. But what if we've been thinking about them all wrong? The theory we're digging into today suggests exactly that these aren't just descriptions of who a person is at their core, but descriptions of how their internal psychological operating system has fundamentally broken down. Now, to understand a broken system, you've first got to have a blueprint for a healthy one. And for this, the theory uses this really powerful metaphor, the Ouroboros. You know, that ancient symbol of the snake eating its own tail? It's the perfect image for a self-regulating, self-sustaining, and constantly regenerating cycle. So here's the key idea. A healthy mind is an Ouroboros loop. It's this dynamic system that's always taking in new stuff from the world, processing it, keeping itself in balance, and even pushing out disorder, or entropy. It's a system that's basically built for one thing: growth. And here's how that healthy loop is supposed to work. First, you get input from the world around you. Then you process that new information against what you already know, your internal map of reality. From there, you adapt based on that feedback. And finally, you integrate the new information, which lets the whole system grow. It's this beautiful upward spiral. But what happens when that loop breaks? Well, that brings us to the real heart of this theory. The argument is that the four cluster B personality disorders, that's narcissistic, borderline, antisocial, and histrionic, each represent a very specific and unique way that this healthy Ouroboros loop can get corrupted. First up, we have narcissism. The theory calls this the closed system. Think of it like a fortress. The narcissistic loop is trying to create this perfect, self-contained world that never has to change. It tries to defy the basic rule of psychological health, that you need new information to grow. So it just walls itself off, blocking any criticism, any failure, anything that contradicts its perfect self-image. And this really gets to a crucial part of the theory: how other people fit in. In this kind of closed system, other people aren't seen as, well, people. They're just components. They're parts whose only job is to feed the system and keep it stable. Their whole purpose is to maintain the narcissist's very fragile balance. This really lays out the core difference, doesn't it? A healthy system is flexible. It changes itself to better fit the facts of reality. The narcissistic system does the complete opposite. To protect its own rigid internal world, it tries to bend, twist, and rewrite reality itself. And this is where things like gaslighting come from. Okay, next up we have borderline personality disorder, which is framed as the total opposite of narcissism. This is the fractured system. Instead of a fortress wall, its boundary is what's called hyperpermeable. It's like having no firewall at all. The system is just constantly flooded with chaos and emotions from the outside, and it literally shatters the inside. This quote just nails the experience of that fragmentation. The emotion of the moment is so intense, so overwhelming, that it completely severs the connection to all other moments. If you're filled with rage, the memory of ever feeling love can become totally inaccessible. The whole unified self collapses, and only that one intense emotional part is left. So you can see the contrast so clearly here. A healthy, integrated system can hold two opposing feelings at once. I really love this person, but man, I am so angry with them right now. The BBD system just can't do that. It fractures and collapses into these separate, warring states where each intense emotion feels like the one and only truth. Now we get to the antisocial personality, and this one is described as the predatory system. This loop isn't just broken or defensive, it's actively parasitic. It keeps itself stable by deliberately exporting chaos and damage into other people's systems so that it can extract energy and resources for itself. This just captures the worldview perfectly. It is a purely zero-sum game. The core belief is that for me to win, someone else has to lose. For the serpent to grow, it has to eat a piece of another serpent. Growth isn't an internal process, it's an act of pure predation. And the difference in how these systems learn is absolutely critical. A healthy system has that internal feedback loop, things like empathy or guilt that guide its behavior. The ASPD loop doesn't have that. Now, it absolutely learns from its mistakes, but only tactically. The question isn't, was what I did wrong? It's, how can I be a more effective predator next time so I don't get caught?
And finally, we have the histrionic personality. The theory calls this one the ecosystem. This loop is described as being totally hollow at its core. It has no internal source of identity or self-worth, so it becomes completely dependent on getting attention from the outside world just to feel like it exists. Its entire purpose is to perform for an audience.
Wow, this quote just puts it so perfectly. The very foundation of existence gets flipped on its head. It's not, I think, therefore I am. For this system, it's I am seen, therefore I am. If there's no audience, if no one is watching, the self just starts to fade away.
And that's the key contrast you see here. The healthy loop has a solid internal core that generates its own sense of value. The histrionic loop is hollow. It has to borrow its sense of self from the reflection it sees in the eyes of everyone else. It's an identity built entirely on echoes. Okay, so we've broken down these four corrupted systems. What's the big picture view here? Why does thinking about personality in terms of these loops actually change anything? Well, this table really pulls it all together. Just look at the patterns here. Under self-concept, you go from the narcissist's rigid God self all the way to the histrionic mirror, which can only reflect. Or look at relations. The narcissist sees others as objects to be used, while the antisocial sees them as victims to be exploited. It lays out four totally distinct and honestly predictable patterns of system failure. And this, right here, is the fundamental takeaway. This whole model is about shifting our perspective. It moves us away from a moral judgment, what's wrong with you, and moves us toward a systemic, almost mechanical analysis. How is your internal system failing to process reality, and why? It turns a character flaw into an engineering problem. I mean, these final descriptions are just so vivid. The narcissist freezes the loop to preserve a perfect, static self. The borderline spins it with so much emotional chaos that the whole system shatters. The sociopath doesn't just corrupt their own loop, they actively hijack other people's. And the histrionic just screams into their own empty loop, desperate to hear an echo back. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. If personality isn't some fixed, unchangeable thing, but a dynamic, operating system, well, what does that mean for our ability to actually repair it? If it's a broken machine, does that mean that maybe with the right tools, it can actually be fixed?